Hi, we're going to show you how to make a willow Christmas tree hanger like the one shown here. You'll need some tools. We use secateurs and a bodkin, but if you don't have these, you can use a pair of strong scissors and a small screwdriver. You will also need a ruler. The ruler is just to make one measurement of 10 centimeters. You can estimate the length if you don't have a ruler. In your pack, you'll find 3 lengths of willow, 1 long one and 2 shorter ones. These are for the outside of the tree and the outside of the trunk. We'll call these the uprights. You also have several lengths of thinner willow. These are the weavers. You'll need 5 or 6 weavers for each tree. You will have already soaked the willow in cold water for 2 hours and left it to mellow for about 15 minutes. Take the longest thick length of willow and put it against the ruler. At about 10 centimeters, kink the willow with a bodkin or screwdriver to create a V shape. You will have one side which is 10 centimeters and one much longer side. You'll be aiming for an open end of about 9 to 10 centimeters. Take one of the weavers and starting with the thickest end, weave in and out of the 2 sides of the tree. As you pass around the uprights at each side, you need to leave a small gap. If you place the willow right next to the previous turn, you won't be able to keep your rows straight. Watch each row as you weave it and make sure it's straight and that there's a gap between each row at the edges. You can push the weave up in the middle a little. This will help to keep the rows straight. When you are turning the corners, it's important to hold the thick uprights still to prevent them from being pulled in. Keep checking as you go that you still have the nice V shape. Fold the weavers around the uprights, seeing that you have left a small space between the current turn and the previous one. Hold the weaver at a point close to the tree. Keep some tension in the weaver so that you are in control of it. You can undo the weave and start again if necessary. You have to control what the uprights are doing, as well as ensuring the weaver is pressed closely around the uprights in straight lines. You should see a nice pattern developing, small gaps between the rows of weave at the edges and a straight finished edge. As you are weaving, aim to keep an even V shape. When you have weaved about half the length of your first weaver, you need to insert the other 2 uprights to form the outer edges of the trunk. Leave the remainder of the weaver at the back. The back will be the side with the end sticking out at the top. Now we are going to add the trunk of the tree using the 2 smaller uprights. We're going to push the rods into the weave. To make the gaps a little bigger, we're going to use the bodkin or the screwdriver. Push the bodkin into the gap and work it a little, then pull it out. The trunk uprights will have one pointed end and one flat end. You need to insert the pointed end, keeping the cut side towards the outside of the tree. With the cut end towards the outside of the tree, push it into the weave. Do the same for the other side. The 2 trunk lengths should be held quite tightly by the weave. Now continue weaving. You will see that you have 4 uprights to weave through rather than just 2. Bring the weaver around and start weaving in and out of the 4 uprights until the weave runs out. Make sure that you finish with the end at the back and ideally behind one of the 2 trunk uprights. Take another weaver. All weavers start and finish at the back, and you should always start with the thick end. You have to imagine that you're joining the new weaver to the old one. Have a look at the old one and see where it would have gone next. Lay the new weaver next to the old one and continue with the weave. Take your time on this first one to get it right. The new end should be on the back, the same as where the old one finished. Continue weaving in and out of the 4 uprights, making sure you hold each one in place, between thumb and finger, carefully folding the weaver in and out and around the edges until you reach the end. Finish when the end is on the back and is against one of the 2 trunk uprights. Apply an outward pressure on the uprights as you fold the weaver around it to avoid losing the V shape. Check that the finished edge of the weave in a straight line, and there should be gaps between each row at the edges. All the ends are at the back and the front is clean. Take the next weaver and with the thick end first, continue weaving following the same procedure as before. Keep the outward pressure on the outer uprights to keep the shape and hold the trunk upright still and parallel as you weave around them. Continue until you have about 1 centimetre of the shortest upright left. Take your next weaver and run it for a single row, then leave it at the back. You're going to use the rest of the weaver for forming the trunk. Now we have to secure the weave of the tree part. To do this, fold the long upright at the bottom of the weave using your thumbnail to bend around. Make a second bend at the other side. This last section is going to be pushed up into the weave. It will be too long, so you need to cut it at about 2 or 3 centimetres. Make a diagonal cut to create a pointed end. Now, use the screwdriver or bodkin to make a bigger gap in the weave. Then push the cut-off upright into the weave. Now we need to weave the trunk using the remainder of the weaver. Weave around the 2 uprights of the trunk until the weaver runs out. Finish off in the same way as we did for the tree. Make 2 folds, 1 either side, and make a diagonal cut to create a pointed end. Use the bodkin or screwdriver to make the gap in the weave bigger and push the end into the weave. It should be nice and tight. Finally, cut off all the ends. It's quite straightforward with secateurs, but if you use scissors, you may need to lift the willow a little away from the tree and then cut it. Try to cut it so that the edges are flat to the tree, so make a diagonal cut and be careful not to cut too short. The cut end should lie flat against one of the thick uprights. Finally, to make the hanger, push the bodkin or screwdriver through the topmost hole to make it a little bigger if necessary. Then take a length of raffia and pass it through the hole and tie the ends together. And there you have your Christmas tree hanger.